Okay, hello guys. So today we're going to be. I just want to say hey. I hope everyone's doing well. Today I'm gonna be focusing mainly on the nervous system and also talking a little about histology. Yeah, I'll get into detail when we move on to that section. But I just want to just go over everything about the nervous system, including like the sheep brain, and a little bit of the arteries. Actually, most of the arteries too. So we're gonna do nervous system, arteries, histology, and then yeah, we'll talk about that more. So we're gonna start off first with the coronal cut of the sheep's brain. So what I'm gonna be doing like throughout the video. I'm just gonna be showing you where specific locations of each, you can say, structure or like each thing is, and also I will be providing a Google Slides with all my drawings and all like my notations on what I'm writing, just in case you can't really see or you just kind of like it slips through your mind. So I'll be providing that just to let you know. I'm just gonna go over like I'm just gonna technically teach you each landmark of the sheep's brain basically. Okay, so first starting off, this is the coronal cut. So everything that I say in this video is on the lab manual, so I won't be missing anything of the nervous system and anything I talk about today. So it's gonna be a good reference for you guys, okay? Because I really want you guys to pass. Okay. First, starting off, we're going to start off with, as I said, it's the corona cut. We're going to be starting off first. I'm just going to be labeling it so you guys can see. So first, we're going to start off with these two. Let's actually make this a little bigger. Let's see. Okay. So these two sections right here. Actually, the color. Hold on, guys. Sorry. It's not. Okay. Let's go black. Okay. So these two sections right here. These are called the two cerebral hemispheres. There's two of them. Okay, so these are the two cerebral hemispheres. And then this section right here, it's like, looks like a long line. Hold on, let me zoom in. Let's move this part. This long line right here that goes straight up, that's called the longitudinal fissure. Then you see this white little area that looks like this. Let me highlight it for you. That is called the corpus callosum. So this white section, corpus callosum, the straight line that goes straight down between the two cerebral hemispheres, that's the longitudinal fissure. And the two sections dividing the brain is basically called cerebral hemispheres. There's two of them. And then now we're going to go on to the ventricles. So this little section right here, these little openings right here, these are called the lateral ventricles. Then we have our third ventricle right here. And then we have, let's switch colors. We have, I'm gonna technically like cross this section out to separate it. So this is the thalamus, the section's the thalamus. And then we have the hypothalamus, because obviously the hypothalamus is needed because, okay? So, and then this gland, this is actually the pineal gland. Okay, and then this is the brainstem, but we're gonna talk about that in a different picture that I have. So, starting off from the bottom. So this is the pineal gland. This is the thalamus, hypothalamus. Then we have the third ventricle, lateral ventricle, corpus callosum, which is the white, you can say white matter of the brain, and then, or like the section, and then we have the longitudinal fissure, and then what the two separate hemispheres that basically divide the brain are called cerebral hemispheres. So let's see, yeah. So cerebral hemispheres, longitudinal fissure, corpus callosum, lateral ventricle, third ventricle, thalamus, hypothalamus, pineal gland. So that's all from this section. This is called the coronal cut. Now moving on, we're doing, let's see. Okay, we're doing this one. So this is from a different angle. So we technically got it. Yeah, this is from a different angle. So technically the thing that covers the, hold on, let me get a better picture. Okay, yeah, hold on. Okay. So the thing that covers basically the brain is called the dura mater. So this is basically the dura mater. Actually, let me edit so I can show you. Edit. Okay, yeah. So this whole little thing over here, this is called the dura mater. And then the thing that basically you can say like divides the dura mater is called the superior sagittal sinus. Okay. Now, as you can see, we can see in this angle, we also see the two cerebral hemispheres right here. We see the longitudinal fissure, and these little you can say these little lines right here, this is called the arachnoid mater. Let me put it in a different color for you guys can see. This is the arachnoid mater, okay? Then we have the brainstem. This is the brainstem. And we also, in the lab manual, it does say that you have to know the central sulcus in each type of lobe. So I'm also going to explain that to you guys. So starting off, we have, obviously, the frontal lobe. So let's label it frontal lobe. Then we have parietal lobe. This whole line that separates the two cerebral hemispheres, as we said, is called the longitudinal fissure. Then we have, so frontal lobe, parietal lobe, and then we have the occipital lobe off here. And then we also need to know the central sulcus. So the central sulcus is this, technically, you can say this section that divides, that's in between the frontal and the parietal lobe. So this is the central sulcus right here. You can zoom in on the photo. Central sulcus. Oh, I spelled it wrong. But yeah, this is the central sulcus. I would also, as I stated before the video, I will be this section right here, central sulcus. I will also be putting all my labeled images in the Google slides for you guys. But yeah. So arachnoid mater, longitudinal fissure, which separates the two cerebral hemispheres, brainstem, superior sagittal sinus, dura mater, and then we have the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and then this right here is the cerebellum. And then we have, did I say longitudinal? Yeah, we did. Okay, now moving on. Now we're doing the sagittal cut. Sagittal cut of the brain. Okay, this is gonna be, I'm just gonna go in the way that I learned it so you guys, it can help you. So as we said, okay, let's start off with this color. Okay, first starting off, this whole section right here, this is called the cerebellum. Okay, inside the cerebellum it looks like a little tree. Let me technically outline for you. This little tree right here, this is called arbor vitae. So cerebellum, arbor vitae. Arbor vitae is within the cerebellum, okay? Next we have, let's highlight this. This whole section, oh, let me make it bigger. Sorry guys, I don't have a whiteboard and it's very difficult to color. Let's put this one, okay. This whole section right here that I'm highlighting right here, this is the cerebrum. And some people kind of get confused with the cerebellum and cerebrum. So the cerebrum is basically half of, well, it's this section right here, and the cerebellum is the section that contains the arbor vitae in it, which is the tree of life, as professor stated in class when we did learn about this. Next we have, let's go. Okay, now next section we're gonna start. Okay, so first start off, this is the cerebellum, and then inside the cerebellum is arbor vitae, and then this is the cerebrum. And then the little white section, remember we talked about the little white section, that is the corpus callosum. Now moving on to the ventricles. So this right here is a lateral ventricle. Then moving on to this little section right here, this is the third ventricle. Okay, and then the fourth ventricle, I will label it, let's go purple. The fourth ventricle is going to be over here underneath. It's going to be underneath the cerebellum, which is right here. Oh, which is right here. Right here. This is the fourth ventricle. Okay. So the ventricles, we have the lateral ventricle, third ventricle, and then fourth ventricle. Okay. Now getting into more of like detailed things. As I said, I'm basically naming everything that's on the lab manual that you need to know. Okay. So let's name this. I'm gonna erase it because there's stuff that we need to know from inside of the thing. Okay. Now let's move on to, let's see, orange. Okay. Now this section right here, this section, this highlighted section I highlighted orange, that is the medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata. Then we have, after what comes after is basically the easiest one. It's the pons. It's this little, kind of look like a C shape. That's the pons. Okay. Then we have, let's see, because the colors are so hard to do. Okay. Then here we have the midbrain. This is the midbrain, and inside in this little section of the mid, like technically inside of the, I would say like, yeah, inside of the midbrain, that's the corpora quadrigemina. You're definitely gonna have to know that it's inside, and there's just like 4. That's why it's quadrigemina. Then we have, and then this little section next to the 4th ventricle, we have, this is called the cerebral aqueduct. So things listed here, we have the cerebellum, arbor vitae. This section's called the medulla oblongata. We have the pons. Then we have the midbrain. We have the 4th ventricle, which is underneath the cerebellum. Then we have the cerebral aqueduct, and inside, in this section right here, inside, it's called the corpora quadrigemina. Yeah, in the midbrain. So that's this section. And then from here we have the cerebrum, lateral ventricle, corpus callosum, and then this is the 3rd ventricle. And this little section right here, let's switch to purple. This section right here is called the choroid plexus. So starting over again, we have the cerebrum, lateral ventricle, the little white matter, that's called the corpus callosum. Then we have the 3rd ventricle, choroid plexus. Okay, now moving on to highlighting stuff. Let's go highlighting. Let's go blue. Okay. Now from here we have this section right here. This is called the thalamus. And then we have, obviously from the thalamus, you need the hypothalamus. This section's the hypothalamus. Okay. Then we have, oh, and I forgot one structure. Hold on, I'm sorry guys. Let's move to, hold on. Let's go yellow. Okay. This little, you can see nub 2. This is called a pineal gland. So we have the midbrain pineal gland, 3rd ventricle, choroid plexus, corpus callosum, lateral ventricle, cerebrum, okay, thalamus, hypothalamus, pons, medulla oblongata, 4th ventricle right here. This is a cerebral aqueduct, this little section right here. Then inside, next to the midbrain, is called the corpora quadrigemina. This is the midbrain. And then we have the arbor vitae that's inside of the cerebellum. And then the last 2 are basically optic chiasm. So this is the optic chiasm. Optic nerve is usually next to the optic chiasm, which is mainly right here. Then we have the olfactory bulb. Hold on, which the olfactory bulb would be in this section right here. And then we have and then lastly, as we said in the other video, which is basically not the other video, the other picture that I showed you is basically the, so this is the pineal gland. Nope. Yeah, pineal gland. This is the pituitary gland. Okay. So this is all the sections. So let me show you the section. Let me show you basically all highlighted and pretty. Okay. So going over, we have the cerebellum, arbor vitae, which is the tree of life. We have the 4th ventricle. And then from here, we have the cerebral aqueduct. This little section, corpora quadrigemina, midbrain. We have the pineal gland, 3rd ventricle, choroid plexus. This is the corpus callosum, lateral ventricle. This whole section right here is the cerebrum. Then we have the olfactory bulb, optic chiasm, optic nerve, thalamus, hypothalamus, pituitary gland, pons, which is the little C, little shape. Then we have this section, the medulla oblongata, and then yeah, it's pretty. This is all of it labeled. I will be sending this in the slides, okay? Lastly, what do we need to talk about? What did we talk about? Oh, the arteries. Okay, so we're now going to talk about the blood vessels in the brain. I know they're going to be on the, let me show you a good photo. Okay, so Professor, check it. These are the models in class, so I'm just gonna be showing you these basically models, but in picture version. So this big old blue line that's like basically on the skull basically is the superior sagittal sinus. So this blue line, straight blue line, superior sagittal sinus. Now I'm gonna be showing you a picture of okay. So what we saw, it's basically this. So this is the superior sagittal sinus. This vein is the internal jugular vein. Okay. And then let's edit and let's get to coloring. Okay. So this right here, this section right here, that's the anterior cerebral artery. Okay. Moving down, we have the circle of Willis. Then we have the anterior communicating artery, because remember from the cerebral artery, we also need a communicating artery. Then anterior, obviously you're gonna need a posterior. So we have the posterior communicating artery, which is the purple. So this is the posterior communicating artery. This section right here is the posterior cerebral artery. Moving down to this section right here, basically looks like a little tree. That's called the basilar artery. And I forgot one important thing, which is basically right here. These are the middle cerebral arteries. So basically the colors, basically take off all the, there you go, move it, okay. So these little, I'm gonna say green little lines that I showed you, that's the middle cerebral arteries, okay. Starting off for the first, we have the anterior cerebral artery. Going down to this section, this is the anterior communicating artery. The circle is called circle of Willis. Then we have we have an anterior, we need a posterior artery. So we have the posterior cerebral artery, which is pink. Purple is the posterior communicating artery. And then these green lines right here, where these sections right here, that's the middle cerebral artery. Coming down here, this is called the basilar artery. Then we have the external carotid arteries, which is the dark green. Then we have the blue ones, those are the vertebral arteries. So these are vertebral arteries. Then we have the, obviously external, we need an internal. So we have the internal carotid arteries. And then these big old arteries right here, those are the common carotid arteries. Okay, this is the labeled photo. Okay, so starting off from the top, obviously this section is the anterior cerebral artery, as we stated. Superior sagittal sinus, internal jugular vein, circle of Willis. This is the anterior communicating artery, posterior communicating artery, posterior cerebral artery, middle cerebral artery, basilar artery, external carotid arteries, vertebral artery, which is the blue, and then we have the purple, which is the internal carotid artery, and then we have the common carotid artery, which is these ones. So you would have to know all of these arteries for the exam. Okay, so that's that section. Moving on, do we do that? Okay, we did that. I think we're moving on to histology now. Let's see. You can pause it. Now moving on to histology. As I said, we're gonna be talking about the trachea, the esophagus, the bronchus, the bronchial, and the arterial. So when we're getting basically tested on for histology, we're gonna have to know the organ, the structure, and the layer. Okay. So what I'm going to be doing today is basically providing you a more detailed, you can say detailed description / learning mechanism to know, like, to be confident like in the exam, because I know he can just like zoom in on like this little section, he's like, oh, what is this, and you're gonna have to know. So I'm gonna help you guys technically learn how to distinguish these organs with structure and layer. Okay, so first starting off, I want you to tell me what type of organs this belongs to. I'll give you like 10 seconds. Okay. If you didn't answer trachea or esophagus, that's okay. But this is the trachea and esophagus. So I'm technically gonna help you remember everything. Not everything from histology, because that's gonna take forever and have to study for the exam. But I'm just gonna go on for Yeah, start off. Okay, so this section, so your left is this is gonna be the trachea. Okay, this is the esophagus. As you can see, really don't really look similar. Besides, yeah, you can, one of the major differences of these two is the lumen. Okay, so first starting off with the trachea. Let's see if there's a better photo. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Okay. For the trachea, as we see, the lumen is round. Okay. So basically, what is the trachea? So basically, the trachea is our windpipe. So basically, air travels from the larynx and goes to the bronchi of the lungs. Okay. So this also, we're talking about the thoracic cavity, and we're also going to talk about the abdominal cavity histology, which is on the exam. Okay. So as I said, the trachea is part of the thoracic cavity because, aka the lungs, trachea, windpipe. Okay. So as you can see, the lumen is round. The reason for this is because air passes, when you breathe in, passes through the nose, to the throat, and then into the trachea. Okay, so that's why it's round. Now we're gonna talk about each separate layer. So obviously these three all have a mucosa, submucosa, and an adventitia. So I'm gonna be talking in detail about that. So first, starting off in the first layer, we have the mucosa. So we have the mucosa is made out of pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium, which is basically, function of it is absorption and secretion of mucus. It also contains goblet cells and cilia. Compared to the esophagus, as you see, the lumen of the esophagus is not round. And the reason for this is because when you basically chew or basically pass anything through, basically the mouth, the esophagus is able to expand and return back to its original shape. And the first layer of the mucosa of the esophagus is non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. The reason for this, basically, when it's keratinized, basically, when you have any keratinized epithelium, you basically contain the protein keratin, which basically creates a rough outer layer that basically acts like a waterproof layer, waterproof barrier, basically in our throat. So that's why our esophagus doesn't wear or tear that easily when we basically pass food or any other substance that we pass through the throat. Okay. So, yeah, going back to the trachea, so we have let's actually go to a better zoomed in one. Okay. As you can see, actually, where's the trachea? It's esophagus. Okay, this is a picture taken in class. It's not the best photo, I'm sorry, because you can't really take the best photos. You need a really good camera. Okay, so we have the first layer. Should I label it? Hold on, give me a sec. Sorry, guys. Okay, so we have the first layer, which is basically pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium. Then we have the submucosal glands. Hold on. Okay, remember we talked about basically identifying the structures and the layers. So if he points to basically this of the trachea, he's gonna be like, oh, what is this? So this is basically a submucosal gland, and submucosal glands basically basically secrete mucus. Okay, so I just want to show you, where's the trachea? There you go. This is a better photo. This is in the slides. So we have, I'm gonna technically highlight each layer so you guys can know, and I basically be able to identify and become masters at the end of this video. So as we know, the trachea mucosa contains pseudostratified columnar epithelium, which contains goblet cells and cilia. Okay, pseudostratified always contains goblet cells and cilia, and obviously this most likely will be a goblet cell. It's tiny, you can't really see it just because of the photo. Then moving on to the submucosa of the trachea. This would be the submucosa of the trachea. These are submucosal glands. These are, as basically highlighted in the photo, those are called submucosal glands. And lastly, the adventitia for the trachea is basically made out of hyaline cartilage, which is plates, and the trachealis muscle. Okay, so this would basically be the trachealis muscle, and then the hyaline cartilage plates. Let me show you a better photo of this so you can see. Let's see. Oh yeah, basically that'll be it. Hyaline cartilage. Where's the trachea from? There you go. That's the adventitia layer. We have basically the hyaline cartilage plates right here, And then lastly, we have the trachealis muscle. So it's a section of mucosa, submucosa, then the adventitia, and then the cartilage, which is the hyaline cartilage plates. Okay, moving on to the esophagus. Now the esophagus is pretty. This is the photo we took in class for the esophagus. It's pretty good. So I'll be labeling everything from here, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. First, starting off, as we said, the mucosal layer of the esophagus first starts with non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelia, which is the absorption and secretion of mucus. But the only difference is the protein keratin. As we did say, it acts like a waterproof barrier in our esophagus. It also contains submucosal glands, but that's in the submucosa. So this submucosa. Hold on. So first, this layer right here, mucosa. Then we have the submucosa, which is right here, and then we have the adventitia. Okay. But the difference between the trachea and the esophagus is the adventitia. So the adventitia for the esophagus is made of dense, irregular connective tissue, which contains a lot of collagen fibers and a lot of elastic fibers, which is why you can see it look like this. So it looks like that. Let me show you another photo, another perspective of how it looks. Let me see the esophagus. You can also see here, this is the adventitia part. Adventitia, so we have the mucosa, submucosa, adventitia. And the esophagus also has submucosal glands. Remember that. Yeah, so, yeah, adventitia, submucosa, mucosa. Now moving on to the bronchiole and the bronchus. Okay, so the bronchiole and the bronchus, they are basically also in the thoracic cavity. So starting off with let's start with the bronchiole. Starting with bronchiole, okay. The bronchiole, this is how a bronchiole looks. As you can see, the lumen of the bronchiole is not round compared to the bronchus. This is the bronchus. See how the lumen is rounder compared to the bronchiole? Bronchiole, bronchus. Okay, so we have the bronchiole. The reason why the bronchiole's lumen is not round is because the mucosa layer is made out of simple columnar epithelium and simple cuboidal squamous epithelium, which basically function of it is absorption, secretion, and excretion of mucus. So basically allows the lubrication of the lining of the lungs. So basically, remember, the bronchiole and the bronchus are basically in the lungs. So basically allows you to so basically you won't be able to feel pain when you're breathing, because if it's not lubricated, then you're gonna feel a lot of pain. So moving on from there you go. This is the bronchiole, right? So first we have simple columnar and simple cuboidal squamous epithelium. Then we have, this is basically the also the difference between the bronchiole and the bronchus is that the bronchiole does not have an adventitia. Bronchiole does not have an adventitia. Okay, so the only thing that the bronchiole has is basically the mucosa and the submucosa, which is made out of smooth muscle, and yeah, smooth muscle. So basically, this is basically smooth muscle right here. This little arrow, smooth muscle, and then we have submucosal glands. Okay, and then we have the bronchus. Bronchus, the difference between, as I said, lumen. So lumen is very round, okay? And basically the bronchus also contains submucosal glands, which produces mucus, and also has a difference between, a good difference too is that it has hyaline cartilage plates, which are these right here around it. And it also made of dense irregular connective tissue, which you can see around it. Let's see if there's a better photo. Esophagus. This is another bronchus photo right here. Hyaline cartilage plates. Okay. And then dense irregular connective tissue around it. This is another one right here. So bronchus, bronchiole. Bronchiole is also really small compared to the bronchus. See? And then these little guys all the way over here, these are called alveoli. Alveoli is only made of simple squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epitheliums allow certain things to pass through that layer, which can be either gases or nutrients. In this case, it will be gases because we're talking about the lungs. Okay, so these are alveoli, and if you want a better photo of an alveoli, this is the alveoli. See, very thin layer of simple squamous epithelium. Okay, so this photo, this is a good reference to like all of the things together. So we have the bronchi over here, which is very tiny. Then we have the alveoli, and then this is basically the bronchus, and then the bronchial cartilage, aka hyaline cartilage plates, and also ventricular tissue. And yeah, and also I believe the bronchial. Hold on, let's see. Let me do reference because I don't want to basically bronchus. So the bronchial doesn't. Sorry about that. The bronchial doesn't have submucosal glands. It's just the bronchus does have submucosal glands. The bronchial doesn't. It's just made of smooth muscle. So yeah. So basically everything around here is smooth muscle, and then it just has simple squamous and simple cuboidal epithelium. Yeah. So smooth muscle. I think this is a submucosal gland. Don't quote me on that, but yeah. So yeah, I just wanted you guys to become more familiar about how each basically all of them look. So obviously just by looking at the esophagus, trachea, bronchial, bronchus. I feel like one thing to like a one pointer to look is at the lumen. I feel like the lumen would help you guys understand, like especially with these basically this like section, like the thoracic and the abdominal cavity. And yeah, so this is alveoli. I'm just gonna go over one through again. So we alveoli. This what is this, guys? You have to tell me. If you guys said bronchus, that's very good. Bronchus has the hyaline cartilage plate, and then also made out of dense irregular connective tissue, and it also has submucosal glands, and then it also and then we have, this is the bronchial. Lumen is not round. It has made out of smooth muscle. The bronchial's mucosa layer is made out of simple squamous epithelium and simple cuboidal epithelium. Bronchial, see, smooth muscle around it. Alveoli is right here. Bronchial, esophagus, trachea, esophagus, adventitia, submucosa, and then mucosa layer, submucosal glands. Trachea, we have some mucosal glands. Moving on, see, this is a better photo so you can see pseudostratified columnar epithelium. You have the mucosa layer, submucosal layer, which has some mucosal glands. Adventitia. Same thing for esophagus. And yeah, let's go over one more time for the superior sagittal sinus, interjugular vein. Now the arteries, go to the arteries, okay. Sorry guys, okay. So the superior sagittal sinus, interjugular vein, moving on closely. Oh, sorry. Then we have the anterior cerebral artery, circle of Willis, anterior communicating artery, posterior communicating artery, posterior cerebral artery, middle cerebral artery, basilar artery. Then we have the vertebral artery, which is in blue, external carotid artery, internal carotid artery, and common carotid artery. And lastly, just going over one more time, this is the sagittal cut of the goats, basically. Is sheep brain? Sheep brain, there you go. So we have cerebellum, arbor vitae, fourth ventricle. We have the cerebral aqueduct, corpora quadrigemina, midbrain, pineal gland, cerebrum, lateral ventricle. Sorry, Siri. Okay, sorry. So we have the cerebrum, lateral ventricle, third ventricle, choroid plexus, thalamus, hypothalamus, optic chiasm. Next to the optic chiasm is the optic nerve, olfactory bulb, pituitary gland, pons, this section, medulla oblongata. That'll be pretty much it. And then if he shows you a coronal cut, we have the corpus callosum, lateral ventricles, third ventricle, thalamus, hypothalamus, pituitary gland. And then the two hemispheres are called cerebral hemispheres. The line that separates the two cerebral hemispheres are the longitudinal fissures. And yep. And then also frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, cerebellum, central sulcus, which divides the frontal and the parietal lobe. So yeah, that's what I have all for today. I know it was a little tricky to like show you guys everything just because this is kind of like hard information to like teach, but also just the pictures in general you can't really see like specifically what I'm looking at. But yeah, I hope you understand like the difference between the bronchus and the bronchial, and then the trachea and the esophagus. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know. I will be putting all these photos and all my detailed drawings in a Google Slides. And yeah, that's it for today. Thank you.